Good afternoon, everyone. It's the Rangers Review. We are here with your press conference reaction, but a bit of a different press conference to one that we maybe anticipated just about this time last week. Barry Ferguson's first public appearance as Rangers manager Chris Jack, a 20-minute press conference in which there was a lot of detail and a lot of things to discuss ahead of the game with Kilmarnock tomorrow. Ferguson obviously was unveiled yesterday as the head of an interim team, which also includes Billy Dodds, Neil McCann, Sam Shirai, and Alan McGregor, as well as the changes that were rung by Patrick Stewart following the dismissal of Philippe Clement on Sunday night. Chris, lots to talk about, as seems to be the case with the Rangers at all times these days. I was there at the press conference as a cliche to say that a manager spoke very well. I thought Ferguson did. I don't think I've actually been on since his appointment was confirmed, but we'll get into a few details from it, questions that people may have. But what were your impressions from a press conference that had quite a lot of anticipation given the tumult that is, well, engulfed Rangers for more than this week, but certainly over the latter point of the weekend into the start of this week?
Like you, it's something of a cliche, but I think he did speak well. I thought he answered everything openly and honestly. I thought he said all the right things. He said some things that will, I think, get the fans on side. I think the line in James Tavernier remaining as captain will perhaps not keep the fans on side, but that's something I'm sure we'll come on and talk about. But I think he handled it well. It's clearly been a very busy couple of days for him. As I outlined in my piece on the site this morning, as you outlined in your piece this morning, it's been a very busy couple of days at Rangers. Things have moved very quickly. Barry had to move very quickly to bring in that staff that you outlined there. Ultimately, he's there to win games of football. Will he be able to win enough of them to make this a worthwhile appointment, to win over some of the doubters? Was on the show yesterday, and it was actually taken aback a wee bit by some of the fan reaction. There wasn't a lot of people saying this is a good idea. I'm happy with this. Let's go for it. A lot of people saying it doesn't have the credentials, which he touched on. Saying he doesn't have the experience, which he touched on. Why is he the Rangers manager? I think you have to look at the bigger picture. Have to look at the circumstances in which he has become the Rangers manager. He knows that himself. He's fully aware of that himself. But he won't, as one of the lines in his presser, he said he's taking this seriously. Of course he is. He's Barry Ferguson. He's back at Rangers. He knows this football club. He knows what's expected. And if he can do anything for this group, if he can put a bit of confidence back into them, if he can show them the way to go and win consistently, he may not be at Ibrox next season, but he can still have an impact on a number of these players that should and could put them in a better place for the remainder of their Rangers careers.
Yeah, loads of people can watch the press conference on the YouTube channel. They can read every single word on the website. Asked to kind of sum up the last 48 hours, he said, it's obviously been hectic but enjoyable. I was surprised to get the call on Sunday, but it only took me 5 minutes to agree to become the interim manager. It was a case of me trying to work things out, which thankfully took only about 10 to 12 hours in terms of getting my staff in, because I was worried that would drag on. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, and I got the three guys I wanted. Asked about the staff, he said there's a number of reasons. Both Neil and Billy have got experience as managers. I've obviously played alongside Alan, who knows the club. They're all bubbly people. I'm not sure. I think he was referring to Neil McCann and Billy does maybe a little bit more there. As I mentioned, they're big characters. Certainly applies to Alan McGregor there. They like to get in amongst the boys, and I think that's important because the last couple of weeks have been difficult for the group of players. So it was important I get the right people in to get about them. Also for myself, it's important the players feel comfortable around good people, but also good coaches. One thing that stood out to me, Chris, he spoke a little bit, Barry Ferguson, about his style of play, admitted that while we only have one training session, that won't be used as an excuse. When he was asked, have you told the players what you expect from them? He replied, I expect them to win games of football, which was a nice little clip that I'm sure people will like. I'm not sure how much you can realistically expect to see tactically different tomorrow, Chris, but you can see a much more engaged, intense performance. I think one of the biggest complaints people have had with Rangers, justifiably so, is the tempo they play at when they're chasing games at Queen's Park in the last 10 minutes. It takes them until they're in a crisis mode to move the ball at speed, to get the ball back into play quickly. Neil McCann obviously was discussing that very topic on Sports Scene at the weekend. It's clear that Ferguson is trying to put a coaching team around him that will complement him for these 3 months. And I mean, how realistic is it to assume that we do see something different tomorrow, or given what has happened quite consistently at Rangers in recent years, should a new manager bounce and a upturn in performance subsequently kind of just be expected?
I think it can be expected to a degree because, as you've touched on there, that's what this group of players and previous groups of players have shown. They show that when the voice is different, that they react to it in a better way and react to it in a different way. Tactically, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of change in terms of what Barry does tomorrow night. In terms of the players that you can actually select, there wasn't obviously a squad update, so we're assuming that Rangers, in terms of the players, it's going to be the same group as the weekend. So there's not a lot on form. There's very few guys that are really chapping at the door to say I deserve to start. And as he's said himself, he's had one training session. How big an impression can any player make in one training session to say you need to throw me in the side because I've not been playing for the last couple of weeks? So certainly tomorrow night, I wouldn't expect too much. By the time you get a few games in and you get also some more time on the training ground, then you would hope that you would be able to see some form of change. But I think it's that mentality, it's that application, it's that desire, the things that the Rangers fans take as non-negotiables, the things that they look for before they look for how a player traps a ball or before they look at how quick he is over the ground. If you don't have the mentality to be at a club like Rangers, you're never going to succeed, no matter how technically gifted you are. That's maybe something that Barry and his staff can implement, and maybe something they can impart in some of these players. I don't think they're bad players, not all of them anyway. I don't think they're bad players in terms of in terms of what they can actually do with the ball at their feet. It's do they have the mentality to not just win the odd game? Can they? I think as Barry referenced today, and as he referenced in his RTV piece yesterday, consistency wins your leagues. Rangers don't have it, and if he can do anything, if he can put that into this squad, I say that could be his mini legacy, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, you can winning makes people feel better, and Rangers season is as good as over. But if you're able to, if Barry Ferguson is able to take Rangers in a little bit of a run, then I think at the outset, people will get behind him because of his status at the club anyway. Change needed to happen. We'll maybe get on to Philippe Clement a little bit before the end of the window. But we're both going to be at the game tomorrow. Intrigued to see how it goes. A couple of comments. Chris Stevo Pirate says, he said all the right things. Just hope he has the coaching ability to see us through these next 3 months without any embarrassment. Someone expecting here a 1-1-8 formation tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I definitely think, and again we can touch upon this, Chris. The biggest issue Rangers have had is that their style of play under Clement was so direct, and I think it went to the complete opposite end there, where because it was so direct and the players didn't really have the tools to break down defences, it became so slow, and you only started to see the horseshoe at the end of his tenure, where I think options kind of ran out. So there's improvements there that can obviously be made. Bluebells are blue. Think backing Tav as captain is a critical error if he has any aspirations to have the job longer term. If he's here just to tick things over, then it is what it is. You asked if James Tavernier would remain captain. Barry Ferguson said, I don't think there's anything to change. I had a good chat with James last night while we were all in, obviously getting to know some of the staff and getting to know the surroundings as well. And for context, Ferguson and his staff arrived last night for a long meeting before having a meeting with all the players today. James Tavernier was in last night to speak with him. Continuing, he said, I know I've been here plenty of times, but there's been a few changes. It was good to sit down with James, to speak to him and look him in the eyes, and I have no doubt he will give me 100% to lead this club until the end of the season. I mean, Barry Ferguson isn't going to get this job long term, right? That's obvious. He knows that. You referenced that today on multiple occasions. I think it would be a bold move to come in and make a captaincy change. Dujon Sterling, I'm led to believe, is not far away. He had that fractured shin that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Don't think he'll play tomorrow night, but could get minutes as early as Saturday's back training with the squad. I'm led to believe that'll be tomorrow that he'll be back involved. Are you surprised he said that about James Tavernier? I'm not really, because I think summer's the time for radical change. Rangers still need a lot of change in their squad. I agree with you. I think there is good players in there who will look better in a style that holds on to the ball, moves it at pace, as opposed to playing as directly as they have in the Scottish Premiership. But are you surprised at all that Barry Ferguson is kind of sticking with Tavernier as his man, so to speak, at the moment?
I don't think so. I don't think it makes much. Sense for him to come in and make a change like that. If he had been appointed as Rangers manager on a longer term contract, and it was obvious that he was going to be the manager heading into next season, he can maybe have made a justification for making a change like that. But when you're only there for 11 league games and potentially only 2 Europa League games, I don't really see the benefit. Yes, it would have been a populist move, if you like. I think it would have got fans on side. It would have been it could have been seen as like a show of strength, and I'm not going to take anything. I'm not going to take any rubbish, and I'm not going to stand for what's been done before. Ultimately, I don't think James Tavernier is an issue. Is he the biggest one at Ibrox right now? No. So I don't really see why Barry would go in and start picking that fight to an extent. Come the summer, it's a very different situation. Come the summer, James Tavernier's place at this football club is up for debate, not just his status as captain. Under a new sporting director, a new board, obviously a new manager, Tav then becomes a big talking point once again, as he was this time last year, as he was at the start of the season. He will become a bigger issue, will become a bigger talking point. I think it was a sensible thing for Barry to do, to say, you're my captain, let's just try and get through these games together.
Another thing that stood out to me, Chris, and there's obviously loads from this press conference to get into. Some people would say Barry Ferguson was asked. I keep saying his full name, and I don't like it when people do that with managers, so I'm just going to say Ferguson from now on. Okay. Some people would say, you don't have the experience for this position. What would your response be? Ferguson said, judge me at the end of the 3 months. I have no issue. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. One thing you'll get from me and my staff when I'm coming in here, I'm not taking this lightly. I'm taking it seriously, and that will start tomorrow night. I would rather be judged come the end of the season, but also know I'm going to be judged game by game. That is the nature of the beast when you're at Glasgow Rangers. Chris, I think we can sometimes be quite black and white about someone who's a Rangers man and who's not a Rangers man, and someone who gets it and who doesn't. The reaction you're discussing yesterday, just in isolation on the podcast, do you think it's harsh on Ferguson? He's not had a glittering managerial career. He's taken a step back. I think on one hand, you've got fans understandably are saying, look, there's a Europa League tie to be played against Jose Mourinho. There is a precarious situation here where a season could run while there's nothing to play for. You could still have really negative results between now and the end of the season should the club have not had a contingency plan that was better suited in terms of a manager who's managed at a high level. And then I think you've got the other hand where you say, well, is this a new manager bounce, an interim period? Perhaps quite a lot of it is about personality and understanding and putting a good team around the figurehead. And Rangers requires a figurehead, I think, whether you like it or not. And maybe Ferguson, who's someone who's had a fantastic playing career in his own right, is better suited to that. I mean, what do you make of the reaction overall and that comment there about maybe not being judged right now, but being given the time to prove in his own right how he will tackle this size of a challenge?
So I was slightly surprised by the strength of not all of the negativity, but some of it. There was a lot of people saying Barry shouldn't be Rangers manager, but there was very few alternatives. And I said when I was on with Derek the other day, there wasn't a lot of people saying it shouldn't be Barry, but it should be him, or it should be him. Kevin Thompson was the name that also came up quite a lot. if Tomo had got the job, I would have had no complaints and no qualms about that whatsoever. But you look at the situation Rangers are in, they just need to find someone to get through these next few games. They need to try and find someone who can put a bit of confidence back in this group, who can try and show them the Rangers way, if you like, of what's required, who can have some form of relationship with the fans. And Barry ticks that box better than almost anyone that you could possibly get. So if you say it shouldn't be Barry and it shouldn't be this coaching staff, that's fine. But where else were Rangers going to get to? Who else was going to take this job on a 3-month stint with no guarantee and almost no chance that you're going to get it after that? I think when Stuart McCall came in 2015, when he came in, he knew that if certain things were ticked, if he managed to achieve certain things, namely getting promotion back to the Premiership, he would have been with a real chance of getting the job. Ultimately, he didn't. Rangers failed against Motherwell. Mark Warburton got it, and history is history. It's different with Barry. He's not going to be the Rangers manager. He could go and win every single one of these domestic games, including 2 Old Firm games. He's not going to get the Rangers job come next season. That's not going to be the way that the new board and the new sporting director are going to go down. So he was almost for me, he's the obvious choice. For me, I think he's absolutely the only choice. Where else were Rangers going to turn to in a situation that, yes, they shouldn't have been in, but they are once again. They had to find a way out of it. Clement had to go, and of course he then need a manager to come in and just see these games out. So I was slightly surprised that there was as much negativity towards him. If it had been someone who did not have his standing, I could maybe get it. But Barry Ferguson's CV and Barry Ferguson, the Ranger, speaks for itself. So I was slightly surprised that there was as many completely against the idea.
Yeah, Bluebells are blue again, saying personally very happy McCann is in there in some capacity. I think the thing with Kevin Thompson, as you mentioned there, Chris, is that obviously Sam Shirai remains part of the staff. He was more of a club-led appointment as opposed to Clement. Kevin Thompson has also just started that role in the academy, and that was quite a relatively long, a couple of months hiring process to identify that. While the academy changes that are going on that we've reported about over the course of the last month, I think it would have disrupted that process as well had you maybe taken Kevin Thompson out of there. What's your I was speaking to someone on my way to the training ground today. My first Barry Ferguson memories as a player. So I kind of remember just before he left. I'm born in 1999. When did he leave Rangers the first time? What year? 2000.
You've just made an awful lot of people feel very, very old there. Saying that you're born in 1999 and you can't remember Barry first time around.
I kind of can, but do you know one of my the first goal that really stands out in my memory, and I was probably 8 at this time, the start of the 2007-8 season, Rangers won 3-0, I think, up at Inverness, and it was when Walter Smith was using them further up the pitch. I think Novo scored and Barry Ferguson scored 2. Do you remember the lobby scored over the Inverness keeper? Mm-hmm. That's what I have in my mind. So I'm showing my relative age. What about you, Chris? What's your early Barry Ferguson memories? Is it that game against Inverness or slightly earlier?
No, I think I was probably in high school after that one. I probably actually working. I actually would have been working at that. Never mind high school. I'd have been doing this job back then. I think that's what I touched on. That's what I touched on there. Now, Barry, for a whole generation of people, my generation, a wee bit of yours, he is the Rangers captain. He was the Rangers captain that you grew up, and he was winning leagues, he was winning cups, he was going on memorable European runs, and see, for me that got him this job. I mentioned that in the piece on the website this morning. He's not got it because he's got a fantastic coaching record, and he's the ideal guy to come in and try and do something radical in terms of this team. He's got it because he's Barry Ferguson. He's got it because he's a Hall of Famer. He's got it because he's a former Rangers captain. He's got it because he's won 5 leagues, 5 League Cups, 5 Scottish Cups, and everyone will have their own favourite Barry memory. if he can add, he's not going to add anything over these coming weeks that's going to add to his legacy. I hope that what happens over these next 11 league games doesn't damage the legacy. I think there was a lot of talk about that during Ally McCoy's time of does his managerial failures, does that take away from Coisty, the Rangers legend? I said at that time that it shouldn't, it wouldn't, and it couldn't. And the same thing for Barry Ferguson here. He's been handed a really difficult situation. He's come into a squad of players who have not been playing well, who are short of quality, who are low in confidence. There's a lot for him to take on, but he wouldn't have taken it on if it wasn't for Rangers. And you speak about standards and history and knowing the club. Barry Ferguson encapsulates all of that for so many people. So that's what he can bring to the party over these next couple of weeks. And so hopefully it goes well for him, and everyone can shake hands at the end of the season and say, Barry, thanks for your efforts. You've done us a turn, but come the first game next season, you're back in the hospitality lounges.
Yeah, Steve was saying people worried about Barry's management credential. If he gets a bit of heart and commitment from these players, that's half the Clement problem solved. He says too much passivity in the squad. Chris, before we finish, loads and loads of content on the Rangers Review, more than you and I can keep up with, so hopefully not too much for our readers. But a reminder to people, you can subscribe at the moment, I think, for £1 for 6 months. So as good a time as ever in a period where there is a lot of Rangers news. You've got a piece telling a little bit more of the story surrounding Barry Ferguson's appointment. I've got a piece telling a little bit more of the story, or a lot of the story, because it's quite long, surrounding Philippe Clement's time and ultimate sacking as Rangers manager. As included in that piece, Clement actually had a meeting with the squad. Yes, is it Tuesday? Yeah, it's Tuesday. Yesterday on Monday, so went quickly. After being sacked, that kind of shows that there wasn't open revolt in the dressing room towards the end, but there's a lot of details in that piece that I think tell the story, I hope, pretty accurately. Certainly speaking to people to form a greater picture of what happened under Clement's time at the club. One thing that's in that piece that I think stands out, sums it up. There was a bit of, I think, if you look at Clement's time at the club, of a breakdown between him being a front foot manager, which he considers himself. He spoke about it just last week in relation to Jose Mourinho, and a ball dominant manager. And that's where the ultimate breakdown came to me. What he wanted to do wasn't working, and that became more and more apparent over time. The game against Kilmarnock tomorrow night is almost exactly a year on. February 26th this year. It was February 28th last year that Clement won there, and it seemed as if the only way was up. He'd won 18 of his first 20 games. The underlying numbers looked good. It was 18 out of 20 then, Chris. It's 21 out of 37 since. A complete nosedive, drop-off, call it what you want. The writing ultimately, I think, was on the wall a long time ago, but with a bit of distance, it was a decision that Patrick Stewart had to make, whether he made it at the right time, whether he should have backed him earlier. All other questions, naturally, they're going to come out of it. I think it was ultimately, if you look back to that record, 18 out of 20, 21 out of 37, it became pretty clear, I think, at some point last year, this was going to be the inevitable conclusion at some point, unfortunately, for Clement.
I think how many games have we watched this season, and either on camera or off camera we've said it's all heading one way. It became MD who had a knowledge and understanding of Rangers and of these situations. It was clear how this was going to go. Managers reach a certain point from which there is just no road back. Clement, even until last weekend, clearly felt there was a way back. I thought he was really different after the St Mirren game. After St Mirren, he looked like a beaten man. He looked like, actually, the game's up here. There's no way that I can turn this around. You also had a line in a piece, I think it was last week. Not very often I give you a bit of credit, but I like the line of how he began to use results to mask performances and performances to mask results. And he just always felt like a guy who was looking for excuses and ways out and trying to talk himself out of situations that ultimately he'd put himself in. The style of play was not good enough. I think the recruitment overall not been good enough. And as you've just outlined there, results nowhere near good enough. Rangers managers do not survive with that record, and nor should they. Now, yes, I think you can look at the bigger picture, and both he and Patrick Stewart have mentioned these deep-rooted problems that are within Ibrox and Auchenhowie. They obviously have to be identified and solved, but ultimately Clement failed because of his own approach and because of the way that he set this side up and the way that that side performed and the results that that side earned. So he should have been gone a long time ago. I think after the Dundee United game at Ibrox, I'm fairly sure we spoke, and I said that it was done. He had to go then. Queen's Park should have been unsurvivable, but somehow was. He got himself through Queen's Park, got himself through another week. Patrick Stewart then makes a decision to come out and back him again, and within a couple of days has to sack him. So I don't think there's not a lot of people come out of the last few months at Rangers with a great deal of credit. The only good thing from a supporter's point of view is they can look to the summer. They can say there will be proper change in the dugout. There'll be more change in terms of the ownership. There'll be more change in terms of the squad. And hopefully, at long last, those changes actually prove to be the right ones for this football club.
Yeah, I think kind of finally summing it up, that it was 18 months ago that the process to appoint Clement concluded that he was the best option. Obviously, Kevin Muscat was right down to the wire as a consideration too. It was believed that Clement would get more out of the current squad. Rangers had just undergone significant work financially to their squad to rebuild it that summer in a manager's image. The consequences of that we've discussed plenty of times in the year and a half since, Chris. It would have taken a lot of work to get that squad suited to a style of play like Kevin Muscat's. I think a lot of work and information that we've gathered was put into working out that Clement was a winner. And again, you speak to people, he embodies the first in, last out. He bought in. Yes, you're right. He survived results that Rangers managers should not. He also bought into a project that was not exactly the one he thought he signed up for. He referenced that latterly in his Rangers career. There was promises perhaps not kept for him. So both sides, I guess, had to make concessions. There was an understanding that he was a winner. The line that a few people spoke about out of his interview process was he referenced his second title in Belgium with Club Brugge as the most impressive, because it not only showed that he could win, but he could win again. He could create a winning culture. I think you could summarise it. Rangers looking for a manager to be a silver bullet. While all this executive change went on in the background, while they kind of tore down the sporting director structure, they're now building back up. A lot of work was put into the belief that Clement was a winner, and perhaps not enough was put into understanding how he won, why he won, and how that would translate to games like the weekend, where Rangers just did eventually have such poor chance creation numbers, which led to the type of results that ultimately sealed his fate. But people can read that piece if they want on the Rangers Review. Got loads of content for you, and there'll be loads more to come. We'll be at Rugby Park tomorrow with all your usual pre, during and post-match coverage. We'll be on in the morning as well to have a little bit more of a look ahead at what Barry Ferguson's first lineup could look like, how much will feasibly change, just how difficult is Kilmarnock away for a first game as Rangers manager. The answer is, I would say, pretty tough. But until then, thank you to Chris for joining me. Thanks to you all for watching. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.